Our movie starts with Lucy Cola. I know it's a pretty silly name, but she's our main character, and she is in space overseeing the sight of the Earth and the distant stars. And she starts reminiscing about her time on Earth while another astronaut instructs Lucy to return to the shuttle. And Lucy wanted to stay out for a few more minutes to enjoy the sunrise, but eventually they begin their descent towards Earth. And Lucy seems a bit disappointed because she really didn't want to leave space. And back on Earth, a few days later, Lucy picks up Blue Iris, her niece, from school, and they both head home together. The scene then takes us to Lucy's house, where we see her in bed with her husband Drew. And yes, his name is Drew Cola. God. Anyways, the pair talk about Lucy's adventure in space, and Drew seems very proud of his wife. And the next morning, Lucy goes to NASA for a therapy session with Dr. Will. And Dr. Will Plimpton, the psychiatrist, is very concerned that Lucy might be working too hard. And Plimpton instructs her to take a break, but Lucy disagrees with him and tells him about her strong grandma, whom she refers to as Nana, and her Nana's work ethic. And Plimpton tries to convince her, and he tells her a story about Michael Collins. And Michael Collins is this guy that flew the Apollo 11 command module, and he circled the moon several times. And Collins wept at certain points as he felt truly alone and cut off from any known life. And Plimpton mentions this story to indicate that Lucy might not be fine even though she's saying that she is. And even though this story was quite convincing, Lucy still disregards her psychiatrist. And she assures him that she is fine and she doesn't need a break. And later that day, Lucy visits her Nana at her house. And after catching up for a while, her grandma asks her if she got a medal. But Lucy tells her that she didn't because she was just doing her job. And Lucy then goes on to complain about her brother Sebastian, who dropped off her niece Blue Iris at their house while she was still in space. And when her grandma asks about her next mission, Lucy tells her that the Polaris mission is in a few weeks, but she can't really be on that mission so soon after coming back to Earth just a few weeks ago. And instead, she's actually aiming to be on the Orion space mission, which launches in about 13 months. And her Nana encourages Lucy to work really hard because she's not getting any younger. And during an orientation for the upcoming Orion mission, Lucy meets Aaron, a robotics specialist. And after the orientation, Aaron asks Lucy for advice, and she tells her to do her best to get a seat on the Orion mission. And during a launch simulation, Lucy imagines herself going to space. And that night, Lucy's husband Drew, who works for a PR office for NASA, approaches her to talk about something serious. And before Drew could say anything, Lucy tells him that she's willing to have a baby after one more mission, assuming that this was the important conversation that he wanted to discuss. And the next day, Lucy is having a meal at NASA when an astronaut named Mark Goodwin asks Lucy to answer some questions for his younger daughters. And when his daughters leave to buy some snacks, Mark invites Lucy to go bowling with him and his exclusive club of astronauts who have seen the face of God. And later, Lucy calls Drew and tells him that she'll be late to undergo a simple training, after which she goes to the bowling game. And Lucy and the other astronauts talk about their experiences in outer space. And Lucy finds out that the other astronauts feel the same way as she does, and that all they could think about is going back to outer space as well. And the next day, after the morning training session, Mark invites Lucy to have lunch with him in the back of his car. And after their meal, Mark reveals to Lucy that his marriage fell apart after he returned from space. And during their conversation, another vehicle passes by, at which point Lucy hides because she was drinking beer while she was on duty. And Mark starts to comment about how she never did anything mischievous back in high school, and when he challenges her to disclose one wrong thing that she did, Lucy kisses him, and they start to make out. And when Lucy gets home that night, she finds out that her grandma's there to have dinner with them. And in a bit, Lucy finds her grandma's gun in her purse, and she decides to take it. And as Iris sets the table, Nana jokes that she dropped her father on his head when he was a baby, and she advises Iris to look up to Lucy because she will guide her properly. And the following morning, Drew finds Lucy sitting on the roof, and they begin to talk about space and the planet's movement around the sun. And during their conversation, Drew confesses that he prays regularly for Lucy's safe return after every mission to outer space. And although Lucy argues that she's already home, Drew insists on telling her that he doesn't think that she's home because her thoughts and her mind are always just about the sky and space. It's not about him or being here at home. And later, at a training session, Lucy learns that Aaron had a new record during the underwater simulation of a spacewalk. And Lucy prepares for her turn, and Jim, the trainer, tells her that she must complete the test in under 8 minutes and 34 seconds. And the divers immerse Lucy underwater, and Jim tells her that her objective is to loosen 18 bolts on a space vehicle. And the simulation begins as soon as Lucy gets into position. position. However, after a few minutes, Lucy hears a pressure alarm on her suit, and Jim tells the divers to get her out, but Lucy insists on finishing the simulation. And the divers finally just take off her helmet and she gets out of the water. And I don't know if it was almost suffocating or being in the water, but something just washes over Lucy and she decides to make love to Mark in his office, and they watch the sunset on the roof. And when she gets home, Drew notifies her that Sebastian called, and after Iris spoke to him, she was very sad. And Lucy tries to comfort her niece, sharing the fact that Sebastian tends to get lost and forget things because all he does is just daydream. And she also tells Iris that when they were children, Nana used to put Sebastian in charge, but Lucy would always make sure that he brushes his teeth despite being the younger one. And Lucy explains that women often end up cleaning up after boys, but they shouldn't worry because women can do the only thing that men cannot, which is to change. And apparently also to just cheat on their husbands. And later we see Jim advising Frank to watch the footage of Lucy's underwater simulation at NASA. And he points out that Lucy's heartbeats remain normal while holding her breath for 2 minutes. And Lucy became calmer during the simulation and completed the task successfully. And at her house, Lucy is relaxing in a tent outside when Iris approaches her with a butterfly that just emerged from its chrysalis. And later on, she goes out with Drew to grab a few drinks, and she notices Aaron sitting alone. And Drew invites Aaron over, and a bit later, Mark comes over and tells them that he was the one that she was waiting for at that table. And Lucy reminds Mark that astronauts are not supposed to mingle outside of work, and Aaron assures them that their dinner was actually strictly professional. And during their drive home, Drew assumes that Mark and Aaron were in a relationship, and Lucy is still upset about what she saw, and she starts to imagine herself preparing for a space launch to relax. And the next day, Mark finds Lucy waiting for him inside his truck, and he takes her to his house to keep their affair a secret from their co-workers. And as they make out, Lucy confesses that she was jealous when she found out about him and Aaron, and Mark admits that he felt the same way about Drew, but Lucy defends Drew and argues that he's a better person than the both of them because he's not cheating on his spouse. Yeah. And later, Lucy asks Mark if he's sleeping with Aaron, and instead of answering, he asks Lucy if she plans to leave Drew. And during their conversation, Lucy hints that she'll do it if Mark tells her to. However, Mark advises her not to trust her emotions as they're a facade constructed by the brain. And after their conversation, Lucy refuses Mark's offer to drive her home, and she goes on her own. And when she gets home, Drew informs her that Nana had a stroke and is in the hospital. And since visiting hours were over, Drew offers to take her in the morning. And the next day, Lucy sees her grandma and she tells her to keep fighting. And upon their return home, Drew confronts Lucy about the loaded gun she's keeping in her glove compartment. And he points out that Lucy has also been acting very strange and is always coming home late. And Lucy tells him that the gun actually belonged to her grandma and she was keeping it because she was worried that something might happen if Nana kept it. But she doesn't tell him that she's cheating on him, she just lets that information slide. And in the next scene, we see that Nana has passed away. And during the funeral, Lucy recites the astronaut's mission checklist to keep herself from breaking down. But when Lucy gets home, she starts to lose it, and she starts tearing off the wallpaper in one of their rooms. And Drew takes her outside just to calm her down. And there, Lucy tells Drew that she's leaving and that she doesn't know if she'll ever come back. And Drew pleads with her to stay, but she confesses that she's been having an affair and that she's also a different person since her return from the mission. And afterwards, Lucy just drives away with Iris to Nana's house. And that night, Lucy listens to the radio broadcast of the Polaris mission, where Mark went as an astronaut. And she's ecstatic to hear that the rocket took off successfully and imagines herself inside the shuttle. And Lucy reports for work the following day and is summoned to Paxton's office, where he informs her that she can't participate in the Orion mission due to her psychological state. And although Lucy pleads with him and highlights her dedication to return to outer space, Paxton disagrees and suggests that she take some time off because her grandma just died. And he offers her the opportunity to train new recruits and assign engineers with system upgrades until their next mission. And he also acknowledges Lucy's excellent work as an astronaut, but notes that she became too emotional. And Lucy starts to suspect of Mark being behind her dismissal. And with Iris's help, she breaks into his office and she starts looking through his emails. And she discovers that he was responsible for her removal and that he's also been having a romantic relationship with Aaron and has promised to take her to San Diego upon his return from space. And at Mark's welcome back party, Lucy's heartbroken to learn that Aaron was selected for the Orion mission. And she confronts Mark and he advises her to turn off her brain and seek therapy. And later that night, Lucy wakes Iris to inform her that she's going on a rescue mission for a few days. And although Lucy warns her that it's a very dangerous mission, Iris insists on going with her. And they enter a store and they get a very scary combination of products: duct tape, rope, and drain washing gloves, a hammer, and insect repellent, and a blonde wig. And after leaving the store, Lucy calculates the speed needed to arrive in San Diego at the same time as Mark and Aaron. And in the car, she gets this hallucination of her grandma in the passenger seat. And her grandma tells her that she's become soft after her affair with Mark. But Lucy argues that she's actually pretty strong, as she can withstand 8 units of G-force during her mission from space. And then Lucy tells her grandma that she's on a rescue mission to save herself, and the scene then cuts to a message left by Lucy for Paxton. And she acknowledges that although she was qualified for the job, she wasn't ready for the experience in space. And Lucy expresses that going back into space is her purpose, and she needs a little nudge to get back on track. And after listening to the message, Paxton asks Drew about Lucy's whereabouts, but Drew has no idea. And later, Lucy stops at a gas station to fill up her tank and 3 other containers in the back of her car. And when Iris peers into her glove compartment, she finds a gun and she hides it in her bag. And upon arriving at the airport, Lucy searches for the gun, but Iris doesn't tell her that she hid it. And failing to find the gun, Lucy wears a wig and she takes the insect repellent with her inside. And meanwhile, Mark and Aaron were at the airport, and Aaron's bag was lost, so she had to report it. Mark then heads to get the rental car as Aaron waits for the airline to locate her bag. And as Mark walks to the parking space, Lucy enters the airport and follows him. When Mark gets inside the car, Lucy confronts him, and Mark reminds Lucy that she's a married woman, but she tells him that feelings were only caused by movements of atoms in the brain and that they mean nothing. And as Aaron arrives, Lucy warns her that men like Mark will not let her be successful and that she's making a big mistake by getting into a relationship with him. And then Lucy sprays Mark in the eyes with the insect repellent, but despite being blinded by the spray, Mark drives off, leaving Aaron behind. And then Lucy starts to go on about how men are bringing her down, and Aaron can't understand what Lucy's saying. And after a police chase, Lucy is confronted by officers and she climbs a ledge, turning her back on the police before surrendering. And the movie fast forwards to 3 years later, where Lucy's trying to learn French while driving a truck on a farm. And upon her arrival, Lucy puts on a beekeeper suit and she opens an artificial hive, showcasing her new interests and lifestyle. And we also see Iris in class reciting a poem by Mary Oliver. And the movie ends with Lucy closing the hive and taking off her hood and staring at a butterfly flying nearby. And this symbolizes her growth and her newfound appreciation of nature. And that is how our movie comes to its conclusion. I hope you guys enjoyed our recap. Remember to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.